What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a modification to a very beat up Game Boy Color. Now, I've been seeing these retrofit kits on AliExpress for a long time. Now, these are obviously clones of the Funny Playing LCD kits that you can purchase, but I was looking around at these things, and for 60 bucks, I figured why not just give it a shot. So although I was a little bit concerned about the build quality and the quality overall of the screen and the shell, I went ahead and pulled the trigger and ordered one of these things, and we're going to go ahead and install it in today's video. Now, before we jump into modding this Game Boy Color, I want to take a moment to thank this video's sponsor, MetaQuest Plus. I've been spending a lot of my free time diving into VR with MetaQuest Plus, and I have to say it's been a game changer. Meta sent me this Quest 3S, and as soon as I started the free Quest Plus trial, I was hooked. Now you can try it free for a month too. With MetaQuest Plus, you'll get access to a growing catalog of incredible games, plus 2 curated titles every month and exclusive deals. After your trial, it's just $8 a month or $60 a year. An amazing value for anybody who's got a MetaQuest product. Now, if you're ready to explore new worlds and experiences, click the link below to start your free trial today. Okay, and now that we've got that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what comes in this kit altogether. So there are a lot of issues with purchasing on AliExpress. One of the big ones is getting scammed. You can make a purchase, they'll claim they've shipped it, they ship it to some random location, and before you know it, you haven't received your product and you've spent some money on it, and you got to go through this whole claim process with AliExpress. This company specifically, they have a shop on AliExpress and they are quite reputable. They are called Gamenaissance. Now, I did purchase this myself, but I do want to make note that if you are interested in a kit like this, reputable supplier is Gamenaissance, and you can contact them both on Instagram and on Facebook as well. So anyways, that's where I got the kit. What we are going to get, obviously, is what they call a version 3 IPS drop-in kit. It's a fully laminated LCD screen, and what's nice about this, you won't be able to see it right this second, but when we get it turned on, you will. The screen size here is about 25% bigger than an original Game Boy Color. So not only is it fully customizable in terms of its brightness and the color palette, but also you've got the ability to have a larger screen on your original Game Boy Color. Next, we're obviously going to get the wiring harness and the flex cable that needs to be soldered in and controlled. They give you a couple really thin, small wires. And then the last part of the kit itself is going to be the stickers and then all the components that you need for the replacement shell. Now, I went with this UV printed Pokemon Charizard shell just because I thought it looked really cool. It is a transparent red shell, and then they do the UV printing directly on the front of it. And I think it actually looks quite good. And as far as the quality goes, this is as good of a shell as I've ever purchased for any of the Game Boy Color mods that I've done. So I'm actually a little bit impressed with the overall kit and the value that you get for 60 bucks, but I don't want to speak too soon. I want to get the screen installed so we can actually see how good it looks. So one last note about this shell, this is a custom shell that is made specifically for these sort of drop-in laminated LCD screens. So it does make the installation much easier, and you don't have to modify them at all in any way. You don't have to cut out the trim or any other plastic bits. They are designed specifically as a drop-in kit. Okay, so full disclosure, this kit does require a little bit of soldering, but if you've got a very base level soldering set of skills, you should be able to do this modification with no problem. Now, in terms of my donor console, I've got myself a very clearly broken Game Boy Color. Now, the screen is completely train wrecked. There is no repairing that, so I thought this would be a good option to do the upgrade to. The shell overall is in really rough shape. You can see it's significantly scratched and cracked in many different spots. The overall quality of the device is not great, although it does appear to be working perfectly fine. If you go ahead and turn it on, you can hear the Game Boy noise does turn on, and when you stick a cartridge in, you can absolutely hear the game. So I'm going to hope that the games and everything else are going to run well, because I'm kind of going blind on this, but I don't anticipate there's going to be any issues with this. So to get the ball started, we are going to go ahead and start disassembling this. There are 6 screws on the back of this console. We're just going to go ahead and remove those. Screws are removed, so we can go ahead and pop the cap off. And there we go. There is our exposed Game Boy Color board. Next, we've got 3 individual screws that we got to remove. Now that our board is loose, we're going to go ahead and remove the ribbon for the existing LCD screen. And now we should be able to just go ahead and pick up the whole board without any issues. Now, as for the original screen and shell, we actually don't need anything from it, including the screws. The kit comes with everything that you need to get this thing up and running, with the exception of the actual Game Boy Color board. Now, here is our Game Boy Color board itself. We've got the speaker in there, and I did mention, obviously it works. I did show that it worked. But with these speakers, they can blow at really any time, especially when they are this old. So I found it good practice when I've got a board open to go ahead and just replace that with a different speaker. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. There we go. Now we've got our new speaker installed, so that is going to last us for many, many years now. And just like with the speaker, since we've got it open, we may as well give the board a quick clean and just make sure that there isn't any built up dust in any of the connection ports. All right, so that's all we need to do right now with the board. We're going to go ahead and set it aside. Next, we're going to go ahead and grab the new screen, and what we need to do is there is a little sticker that kind of wraps all the way around the screen. We're going to go ahead and just clip it right here, just so that way when we remove the plastic from the screen, it's going to be easy to take it off without damaging the screen at all. We're going to go ahead and remove some of this plastic that is on there to protect the device. And now we are good to actually install the screen in the top of the shell case. So there is some two-sided tape here, just along each side of the LCD. We're going to go ahead and remove that. Next, we are going to carefully slide this into the top of the shell. And it's important to note that you want to go bottom in first, so that way you can kind of get these connectors in here without pinching them at all. And once you get it in there, it's like a perfect fit. There isn't really a bad way to put it in. There isn't a way that you're going to end up with it crooked or anything like that. It fits in there really nice and snug. You don't want to apply too much pressure because it is an LCD panel, but just apply some pressure along the bezel to make sure that two-way tape has adhered correctly. And once you've done that, we've actually got the front portion of the Game Boy Color completed. We've got our little connector accessible here, and everything is sitting nice and flush inside as well. We'll go ahead and set this aside. Next, we're going to take the connection ribbon. So there's actually a few points that we need to solder on here. If you take a look at the top of the ribbon, there is a COM, start, and select pad that we need to solder. We actually don't need to solder the COM pad at all. It's just going to be the start and select. And then if we flip it over onto the other side, there is our main power for the LCD that needs to be soldered as well. We're going to be soldering the power to the switch itself, and then the start and select are actually going to be soldered into some pads that connect into the start and select buttons. Now, earlier in the video, I did mention that they came with 3 tiny wires. This is what they're for. This shorter one right over here, this one's going to be used for our power. These 2 longer ones are what we're going to use for our start and select. The easiest way to do this that I found personally is to pre-solder those pads, put a little bit of solder on each one of them, and then grab the wire, solder it directly in. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So there we go. We've got these 2 wires now soldered in. There's a little bit of flux residue, which I'll clean up before we do the install. Now we're going to flip this over, and we are going to do the same thing on that power connector. And there we've got it. Now our power line is connected, and we've got our start and select. This is now pretty much the extent of all the soldering we need to do, with the exception of actually terminating those ends. And we can go ahead and grab this and install it onto the LCD. So on the back of this little plate here, we've got another piece of tape. We're going to go ahead and remove that, the double-sided tape there. Then we can go ahead and connect this little ribbon over here to the little ribbon connector on the actual board. There we go. So now that it's connected, we should be good. We're going to go ahead and level this out and just try to keep it as flush as possible along the LCD screen as we can. We're going to apply just a little bit of pressure where that 3M tape was. So now what you should have is your screen looking just like this. We now need to terminate these ends on the actual Game Boy Color board. So this part is a little bit more challenging, but what we effectively need to do is get our start line soldered into the start pin right over here, and our select line soldered into the P12 select pin over here. It's a little bit harder to do with these shorter cables, so if you don't want to solder directly into these points here, there's actually some corresponding points on the actual board above it that you can solder into that are much easier to work with. So there's actually 5 little pads right here. The very last pad that is here is actually also wired into our select key. So these 2 pin points will work the same. So we're gonna go ahead and solder our select line to this last pad here. And of these 3 that are just below it, the one over right here on the far left, that one is also wired into our start key, so we can use that as our base as well. So the process is the same. We're just going to go ahead and solder those in. So that's great. Now we've got those wires soldered in. Next, we're going to go ahead and put all of the components that are needed, your buttons, your pads, and everything into the actual shell. There is one last step. There is a touchpad right over here. This sensor right here allows you to adjust the brightness of the screen by tapping the top of the device. There is another 3M two-sided tape little pad here. We're going to go ahead and remove that and just stick it to somewhere along the inside of the top of the device. So when you tap on it, it'll actually make those changes. So just so you guys can see what that looks like, if you look at the top, you can kind of see it in there. And then if you look from the sides, you can see it's stuck nice and well right to the top lip of the Game Boy Color shell. Now we can go ahead and grab our Game Boy Color and we can drop it back in, and it's going to sit in there relatively loosely. We're going to go ahead and position this new speaker in so it's in there nice and flush. We're going to tuck away the wires so they don't cause any issues. So you can see everything is in there nicely. And just to hold it all in place, we're going to put these 3 screws back in. The kit does come with screws, and I do recommend using the screws that come with the kit. They tend to work better than the originals because I think the threading is a little bit different. Okay, so everything is in there nicely. We've got the screws holding the board in place. Everything feels nice and firm. We got to be careful with this power switch. It might fall out, but if I cover it up, everything looks good on the front. The buttons feel good. All the D-pad directions feel like they're being pressed. The start and select works. And of course, we've got our speaker that's kind of tucked away inside here. Next, we've got to connect this LCD ribbon into the main connector. So that should slide all the way in. You shouldn't see any more of the gold contacts whatsoever. And then we can go ahead and close those little latches along the side to hold that in place. And we're actually almost done. All that needs to be done is to wire in this power. And the power is actually going to go in to this pad right over here, this C pad. I don't know if you can read it there. There's a 32C. You want to go into that third pad, that C pad there. We're going to go ahead and apply some solder and get that wired in. And that is pretty much it. Now that we've got that wired in, we are good to finish up this assembly. And now we've got the completed Game Boy Color. There's a couple more things that we want to do to it just to finish it off and make it look all polished. We're going to go ahead and grab the replacement Game Boy Color sticker, and we're going to go ahead and apply it right over here. We can now remove this protective cover. And there we have it, our completed Game Boy Color with this drop-in laminated LCD display. Let's go ahead and test this thing out because we actually haven't done any testing on it. We should probably throw some batteries in here and make sure everything turns on. All right, here's the moment of truth. Did we do it right? We did, and there it is. So I believe on the top, if you tap the top, you've got 8 or 9 different levels of brightness. We're gonna go ahead and put that on the highest one. All right, so if you press and hold the start and select buttons, you're gonna get access to the menu. From here, if you press start and select, you can actually manually control. Start goes up, select goes down, and you can choose whatever level of brightness you would like. So I'm gonna leave it on the brightest. If you press and hold on the top, wherever that little button is, press and hold on the top, it'll shift over to all of the different settings. And that's going to be for your RGB colors. It can even be for the placement of the LCD. So if it's not 100% centered, Within the frame, you can actually make micro adjustments to it so it fits perfectly, but I actually think I've got it in the right spot. And then to get rid of it all, again, you just go ahead and press and hold the top and it goes away. And that's pretty much it. That is your display. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like with an actual game. We're going to use our Pokemon Silver cartridge. Yes, it is an original Pokemon Silver cartridge. And let's see how this looks and sounds. There we go. Now, one actual thing that I forgot about this Game Boy Color that lights up, you can see if I turn this off, it completely isn't lit up. You can't actually see the Game Boy Color anymore, but if we turn it on, it lights up. You can change the color of that, and you can do that right within the settings. If you go ahead and open up those settings, I believe it's this LCG. If you go to this section here and you just filter through whatever color panel you want, you can actually change it. So if I want this to match the theme of the color, we could go with orange, or we could look for a red maybe, something like that. There's our red. So we could go with something like that to match, and it's actually a cool little feature that is built into these LCDs. And there we have it. That is the AliExpress Game Boy Color drop-in LCD screen that you can pick up for 60 bucks. I picked up a few of them. As you guys can see, I went with a Haunter, a Charizard, and a Pikachu themed one. They got a wide variety of different ones. I will leave a link directly to their store so you guys know where to pick one up. Again, I did purchase these with my own money. This wasn't sent to me by the company. I did want to make a video though, just because I was quite impressed with the overall quality that you get for $60. You get a whole new shell, you get a new screen, you get an awesome increase in your playable viewing area. Just overall, this is a really good little value there. If you're comfortable with soldering, this might be a good kit for you. If not, learn to get comfortable with soldering, I guess. But that's pretty much all I've got for you guys in this video. I do want to thank Meta again for sponsoring this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll speak to you guys again real soon.